Okay, I'm starting the recording now. So effective paragraph writing. So I usually do a bit at the beginning to kind of set the scene. So it's called the current climate. So students often complain about the difficulty in making their writing flow. So it's easy to have lots and lots of ideas and know exactly what you want to say, but then the issue occurs when you have to try and get your thoughts and ideas onto paper. Well, the figurative paper. You want to get it online. You want to get your ideas online. At the same time, you want to structure it in a fashion that whoever is reading it can follow it effectively. So poor paragraph structure makes it impossible to follow an argument, identify problems with placing information in the wrong place. So a paragraph, as I'm sure you know, is a section. So a paragraph should have complete ideas in it. Sometimes the paragraphs are too long, sometimes they're too short, sometimes they contain the wrong things, sometimes it's difficult to know what's going on in each paragraph. So the point of this exercise is to try and make it a little bit more concise. So the QR code, so that is in fact, I'll copy the link again for anybody who turned up before that's a QR code for the Padlet. I'll put the link in again. So I'll often work from this. So the main body paragraphs. So paragraphs are just basically blocks of writing involving a number of related sentences, all connected by a unifying theme or idea. And there on the diagram on the right-hand side, you've got the structure of it. So paragraphs can vary in length, the time to finish one paragraph, move into the next one. And then you have a new idea. Now, particularly when the difference between, can you put it in the Padlet? The difference between paragraphs, between like a piece of coursework and a report, an assignment and a report. What do you think the difference in the paragraphs are? You can put it in the chat. But what do you think the difference in the paragraphs are, or the way they're laid out between a report and a regular, more discussion-based assignment? Or do you think there is a difference? A report and an assignment have got different structures. Okay, so a report is made up of sections with a heading in it, and each section covers a completely different point. And the point is contained, the whole point is contained within that section. The section with the heading on it or the subheading, and it's a complete point. And one doesn't really relate to the other, whereby if you look at more of a discussion-based assignment or piece of coursework, there's no headings, there's no subheadings, and one paragraph can quite often link to the previous paragraph or to the next paragraph, as discussed in the previous paragraph, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so your paragraph or your section should form a complete idea, and even So I think I've said this to some of you before, but this I swear by this. Whatever you're writing, whether you're writing a report, whether you're writing a long paragraph or a short paragraph or a section within a piece of work, it all kind of, generally speaking, works the same way. So your first point, the first bit within your paragraph is the point. Make your point. The next one is back it up, support your point with evidence and examples. So those evidence and those examples, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. That evidence and those examples come from your secondary sources. They come from your research and they come from articles, etc., from the GCU library. So you're making your point, the most important point in the very first sentence of your section or your paragraph. Then you're using the evidence, you're then explaining why it's so important. So when you explain something, that is you being, you're criticizing it, or not criticizing, you're critically evaluating something. By evaluating it, you are showing why the point you've made is so important. And then you can link this point to the next paragraph. Now, if you give me 2 seconds, I'll see if I have a, yeah. So go to the Padlet. Okay, so open up the Padlet. The third section along is called academic article. Click on the first one. So you just need to click on the first one, the one above the professional ethics. So click on it and the article should open up. Okay, and it's called climate justice. It's about climate justice. So if you go down past the abstract and go down, it's on the first page, go down to background. Okay, so that's a section. So the background is a section. So that whole section will be the background. So you'll see that the first sentence is the point. So, which is, for those of you who've done the IELTS exam, it is the topic sentence. So the climate justice is an environmental movement ensuring the social, ecological and economical justice for everyone who contributed the least in causing of global warming but is likely to be the most affected by it. Okay, so that is the background, that is the point. The next one is the evidence, which is backing it up. The question arises that who should pay the price of consequences of the global warming? Okay, so that is evidence, that's supporting the first point, and you've got the author there, which is Eilert. Yeah, Eilert, 2010. Okay, so I'll go back to my point. Your paragraph should include your main point. So the first thing that you say should always be the main topic sentence, should always be the main point in whatever you're doing. It's like the window to your work. So think about the point. So quite often when you're given your coursework, it can be quite challenging, because quite often the coursework brief you're given, and I think I saw one in data science the other day, and it was quite a long coursework brief, and it really requires a lot of working out, and it was a report. So you have to make sure that the first sentence in the report is the main sentence, and then you're using external evidence to back it up. So the macro structure, the big structure, the focus is you build a flow. What's the essay's purpose? So what's the point of you writing it there? It shows that the research area is interesting and relevant. Coherence is the trait that makes your paragraph easily understandable to a reader. Coherence is understandability. If it's understandable, what makes it understandable? That it's easily well spaced out and placed. You can create coherence in your paragraphs by creating logical bridges. Logical bridges are things like this shows that, this demonstrates that. Now, if I go back to the Padlet, I'll see if I'll put it up at the end. The Manchester Phrase Bank. So this is really good. So this is creating your paragraph. Okay. So after you've clearly introduced the topic of your paragraph and stated the point you're attempting to argue, you'll need to bring in some evidence to support that point. This can be in the form of direct quotations, summarizing and paraphrasing somebody else's work. So whoever's doing climate justice, have you been given you will have been given your coursework. Can you write in the Padlet, give me an idea of what the coursework is about? Well, what you'll be doing for the coursework, so I can come up with an example. Think of what you're doing. Hi, Mariam. Have you put your hand up? Okay, you've taken it down. Put in the Padlet an idea or the general topic of your coursework for climate justice. So I have an idea of the kind of things you'll be discussing. Okay, of how climate change is affecting a specific place or sector. Okay, so is that globally, or do you pick somewhere? Yeah, okay, you pick somewhere. That's really interesting. That's good. So yeah, so when you're doing your research and you put your content words into the search bar, discover bar, the GCU library, it's worth making sure that it's as specific as possible. So It's the same. It's the same thing that again you'll be doing. You'll have different sections, and each section, if it's a report, yeah, if it's a report, then each section will have its heading, and then you will start off. You will introduce the topic of the paragraph. You'll have your first, the most important sentence. So if you go back to the Padlet, okay, go back to the Padlet, go to the second academic article called Professional Ethics in Construction. If you go down, okay, if you go down to, let me think. If you go to the theoretical theoretical background, so I think it's on the second page, theoretical background, it's called Modern Slavery Research. Okay, if you can't hear Ifran, that's an issue with your computer. So check the settings. I think you need to have it. You might want to go back out and come back in again. I'll type it out. Check settings. Okay, so modern slavery research. So modern slavery as a research topic has gained increased attention from various academic disciplines, but there have been few contributions from business and management. Okay, that is the topic sentence. That is the topic sentence. And you've got the author there, Caruana et al. 2021. And then you've got all the evidence backing it up. Okay, so if you go back to my PowerPoint evidence, this can be the form of direct quotation, summarizing or paraphrasing. However, you need to slightly reduce the amount of quotations that you use. Don't overuse them. Okay, you can use one or two or a few, but only if they really add something fantastic to your work. Because the trouble with quotations is they quite, yep, I will give you the link just now. There you are, there's the link again. Okay, and the reason for not wanting to overuse quotations is sometimes they can just be used to add up the word count. You don't really want to be doing that. So only really use them if it says something that can't be paraphrased. So words taken directly from another source, which is the quotation, the main ideas from a longer source in your own words, or paraphrasing text rewritten in your own words with the same meaning. So the evidence should be integrated with some explanation or critical analysis, close compare, contrast, close examination, so that your writing flows well. Okay, so when you made your first point, which is the point, which is the topic sentence, then you're bringing in the evidence, which is support from the authors. You are then evaluating it. By evaluating it, you're saying why it's important. So, for example, a report of how climate change is affecting a specific place or sector. So let me think, climate change and this sector of, I don't know, construction. Climate change affecting small-scale construction. You would start off your sentence with what's happening with small-scale construction and climate change. You would then be using your secondary sources to back up what you're saying, and you would say things like, this demonstrates that, or research by so and so shows that. So you're forming a discussion. I think I covered this in the session last week. You're forming a discussion, and you're evaluating and critically evaluating whether it's important or not. But what not to do is just to like drop in sentences and hope that they fit. So inductive, so the main summarizing idea of the whole paragraph is found in the last sentence or in your first sentence. So the paragraph begins with example and builds up support, and the main point is at the end. So there's the example there. 20 years ago, in a remote part of a Pacific island nation, an international aid agency donated a hospital. So you can see that at the beginning, you've kind of got the description leading up to it, and the main point is coming at the end. So if you were to turn that around, you would say an international aid agency donated a hospital. This happened 20 years ago on a remote part of a Pacific island nation. Okay. So if we move that final sentence to the beginning, we have deductive. So people work in different ways. I would probably work in the deductive way. So I'm putting the main bit. So I always put the most important aspect at the start and then follow it up with, with an example. So have a look at these. Compare these two versions. So look at these two. That's the first one and that's the second one. In English, sentences are front-loaded, so the most important information appears early on and later information may be lost, meaning that writers may separate very long sentences and use signpost words to demonstrate the link. That's a very long sentence. Secondly, in English, sentences are front-loaded, so the most important information appears early on, full stop. Later, information may be lost as a result, full stop. Writers may therefore separate very long sentences and use signpost words to demonstrate the link, full stop. So you can see how effective that is, because if the sentence is too long, then it just rambles and rambles and you get lost and you don't know where the information goes. So don't be frightened of using short sentences. Okay, not too short, but a separate idea in each sentence. And there we go back again to the structure of the paragraph, the topic sentence. It outlines the argument or the case, gives a clear idea of the position the writer is presenting, gives a clear idea of the evidence used to support links to topic sentences. The most important information comes first, and then you include keywords. So in order to make it flow from one sentence to the next, you can repeat the keyword. So it's always quite good to repeat words. So if you're talking about environmental impacts, you're talking about high rainfall. So we've had a lot of high rainfall here in the last couple of weeks. And if you're discussing that on the retail sector up the northwest coast of Scotland, you would mention high rainfall, and then you would either paraphrase it and say much rain or heavy rainfall again, in order to ensure a bit of continuity and ensure it flows properly. So the second point can expand in the topic sentence. Your topic sentence comes first, and then you're backing it up. The evidence can be statistics, reference to sources, a diagram. So often the main point you make is your own point. So you're the writer and it's the writer's voice. And then the point after that can be referring to another author, because the author is being used to support what you're saying. So the evidence, meaning the backup point, can be statistics, reference to sources, reference to studies, reference to other authors, reference to case studies, data collection, evaluating and making the point relevant to your assignment brief, and then you move to the next point or you evaluate it. And if you look at those transition words there, in other words, to conclude, thus, finally, summing up, consequently. So they're therefore, consequently, on the whole, ultimately, they're really good. Or consequently meaning as a result of subsequently meaning next. So subsequently meaning next. So that just ensures that your work can flow a bit better. And it may seem that you may think, oh, it's not necessary to put all these words in. In fact, I'll give you a link now, which I actually gave last week, and which I'll give again. I'll give this link again. This for me, this would be my go-to. So click on that, referring to sources. So expanding your point in evidence. So make sure that whatever you're saying, I know it may seem obvious or may seem clear, but make sure that whatever you're saying actually means something. So, does the start of my paragraph give my reader enough information about what the paragraph will be about? Is it too short? Is it too long? Is it off topic? Spell it out, literally. Does my paragraph add to or elaborate on a point made previously? And if so, have I made this explicit with the appropriate linking word or phrase? So if you're discussing something that you've already talked about, then you would say something like, possibly with reference to the heavy rainfall mentioned in section 1. Further studies in Ghana carried out showed that an equal amount of something, something, something. So you're taking your lecturer through a kind of a reading journey. So if you mention something else, you have to show your reader, the lecturer or the PL, where you've discussed about it, where you've discussed it before. So appropriate linking words. Does my paragraph introduce a completely new point or a different viewpoint to before? And if so, have I explicitly showed this with a suitable connective? A connective being a connecting word. Subsequently, consequently, in contrast, studies carried out in the Philippines demonstrated that rainfall, this, that, the next thing. Have I used similar connective repeatedly? If yes, try to vary them using the above list. So don't use words like moreover all the time. And don't use words like with regards all the time. So if you're using connecting words, connectives, try and vary them as much as possible. And then you've got the concluding sentences. The last sentence of the paragraph, it firmly closes your paragraph or argument. So if we go back and it supports your thesis. Okay, there's an example there. It's about pets. Because dogs consume more food than cats, cats have smaller carbon footprint than dogs, which makes them the more sensible pet. So that's your summary. You're summarizing the whole paragraph. So if you go back to the Padlet and click on the first article, which is about climate justice. Let me see, I'm just trying to find. Go to section 4, which is called Climate Justice for Vulnerable Groups. And go to the end of that section. It's quite long. Go to the end of the section, which I think is on, yeah, it's on page 5. And look at the final sentence. So section 4, called Climate Justice for Vulnerable Groups. Go right the way through that section and go to the end and find the final sentence. And it begins, the climate justice provides a sustainable approach and legal framework with a well-defined method to tackle the climate change injustice towards few vulnerable groups, and also to ensure the economic help in order to prepare and mitigate changing climate impacts. That is the concluding sentence. In actual fact, I would half that sentence. I think it's too long. If it's too long, it's confusing, and then you get lost when you're reading it. But essentially, it's summarizing what the whole paragraph is about. So adequate paragraph development, some methods to make sure your paragraph is well developed. So when you're doing your report, when you're doing your assignment, lay it out on a piece of paper. So I actually use paper or on screen online. Divide it up so you know roughly how many words you're putting in each section, and then when you have the rough words within each section, then you put down the main points that you're going to be including, rather than just thinking of the points and then writing off the top of your head. Use examples and illustrations. Make sure the examples and illustrations are current and relevant and valid and authentic and up to date. Okay, don't be using a student blog from the 1980s. Cite data, facts, statistics, evidence, details, and others. Make sure you reference them properly. Examine testimony, what other people say, such as quotes and paraphrases. Examine what other people think. Remember that you're the boss, so you can be really critical when you're using other sources, and you can decide exactly what you're going to put in and spend a good amount of time at your level of finding the appropriate things to put in to support the point you're making. Define terms in the paragraph. If it's a scientific term or a technological term which is difficult to understand, you can explain it. Compare, contrast, evaluate causes and reasons, effects and consequences. So basically, it's just a journey, and you're taking the reader through the journey. So here's a okay. Let me look at the question. Should a coursework just be like an article of paragraphs? Or should it have sections with different headings? It depends what you're asked for. If you are when you're given your coursework, you'll be given a brief, the coursework brief, and it should be quite a few pages. So read it thoroughly and look if it's asked for a report. Okay, if it's a report, it has subheadings. If it's not a report, it doesn't have subheadings. Okay, and depending on the subject matter, you put in different subheadings, and the subheadings is the main thing about what the whole coursework's about. Okay, but normally always say, is it report format? If it's not stated, then ask your lecturer, ask the PLC, what is the format? Is it report? So the one that we've just looked at, sorry, that was a report. So here's the paragraph. I hope you can read it with the colours. The number of wind turbines in Sweden has been increasing during the last decade to more than 3,000 in 2015. That's the topic sentence. Okay, that is the statement about the increase in wind turbines. In the green is the evidence. That's giving examples. Example, they're mainly built offshore but can spread inland. The vicinity of settled wind companies can meet opposition. That's all the things. In the blue, furthermore is another really good way of adding an extra example. And then in the red, you're kind of evaluating it. And then, I'm sorry, that's a bit difficult to read. In northern Sweden and other northern regions, constructing and operating wind farms, further complications by the challenges in cold climates, for instance, low temperatures and ice. So that's kind of the conclusion. Okay, so it's quite easy to work your way through that. So that's the same. So we're going back again. That's the same paragraph. The first one is the topic and the evidence. The second sentence is you're expanding point 1. Next one is expanding point 2. So that's, you could do that. If that was a report, you would be on something like wind turbines. The next one is evidence. Further evidence. Why is it important? If you're saying why something's important, the so what means you're critically evaluating something. Why? Again, you're evaluating it. And in the last sentence, you're concluding and you're transitioning to the next paragraph or the next section. Paragraph problems. Too long and waffling. Quite often, for some reason, people don't really like paragraphs or separate sections. So don't be hesitant. Don't be shy when it comes to making a new paragraph. And if it's a report with a new heading. Waffling means you're just going on and not really making much sense. Or it can be too short, not enough detail, maybe more abstract. So be really specific. Issues with coherence and unity needs better linking. What is the point? You've got the main topic sentence. The second point can be the example. Example 1, maybe example 2. You can evaluate it by saying this shows that, or the importance of this is demonstrated by. Show the point of these sentences, show why they're there. How the paragraph relates to the whole. How does it refer to the whole of your coursework question, the whole of your assignment brief? So, has a patchwork of paraphrases. That is something that a patchwork of paraphrases means that students have taken sentences from different sources, paraphrased them, and then stuck them all together, and it ends up actually not making much sense. So quite often people take stuff from the abstract and then paraphrase it and then stick them all together with the odd reference or something, and that doesn't really work out. So everything's got to be really coherent. Signposting. Therefore, ultimately, firstly, secondly, consequently, subsequently, it signposts the reader, indicates a change in argument. Conversely, You can signpost using single words, short phrases, etc. In contrast, in conclusion, additional pointers, a full sentence. Having discussed the reliability of the research carried out by so-and-so, this report will next address its validity, and retrospective signposting, meaning going back the way. And this PowerPoint will be made available in the module and also in the Padlet. So these are really good, adding ideas, emphasizing above all, equally importantly. So these are really good signposts, and you'll get them also from the Manchester Phrase Bank. These are really good. Firstly, to begin with, secondly, etc., assuming it's relevant. Okay, so I'm going to, in fact, I think I'm going to stop recording now.